When I played Starfield, I was looking forward to a grand space adventure, but to be honest, I was kind of underwhelmed by the empty feeling planets, lifeless NPCs, and weak story. Still finished it though, and I don't know why. Might not have that Bethesda magic that I'm used to, but you best believe I pocketed every item I saw, including all that space food. And we'll explore some of that today as we take a look at the Starfield Cookbook. The Starfield Cookbook, the official cookbook by Cassandra Reeder and Jim Festante, brings us recipes inspired by the settled systems of Starfield. And while I didn't find too many elements of Starfield that interesting, there were some cool little food items I came across, so I'm looking forward to seeing some of those in this book. The book is styled as an in-universe collection of recipes curated by Captain, Chef, and Galactic Gustatorian Extraordinaire Julia Saren, which is a character made up for this cookbook to talk about the galaxy's best eats and sprinkling some anecdotes between the recipes to add some background info and in-game references. There's a good amount of drinks, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic in this book, which doesn't come as a surprise given the amount of available drink items in the game, but what excites me most are the chapters dedicated to chunks and Canuck. Chunks are these absurd cube-shaped insta-meals, kind of like the ones you see in Severance, and Canuck are these Canada-themed food items. If you've played Starfield, I'm sure you've seen a lot of these lying around, and I think they're one of the few remnants of Bethesda's charm and humor. Now, Starfield's visual style has been often described as NASA punk, and I appreciate that the cookbook photos aim for that kind of vibe, surrounding the food with retro, technological, spacey looking props and dinnerware. The food themselves look tasty and aim to replicate how they look in the game, especially the chunk stuff. I think those look the coolest. But now let's check out the food. Let's blast off and cook 3 recipes from the Starfield Cookbook. Am I actually gonna find something Starfield related that I like? Let's find out. Who says there isn't fine dining in space? Well, there is. You can find it in Dawn's Roost on Jemison, where you can taste their showstopper of a dish, the Jemison Wellington. Let's kick it off by prepping the optional horseradish cream sauce. In a small bowl, mix together half a cup of sour cream, 2 tablespoons of prepared drained horseradish, 1 tablespoon of mayo, 1 teaspoon of lemon juice, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a 1/8 teaspoon of black pepper, and a tablespoon of chopped chives. Give that a good stir and let it chill in the fridge until you're ready to plate. Now for the star of the show, take a 1-pound beef tenderloin and season it generously with half a teaspoon of salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Let it rest at room temperature for about 20 to 30 minutes so the seasoning has a chance to work its magic. While that's happening, get a cast iron skillet ripping hot over high heat and add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Sear the tenderloin on all sides for about 2 minutes per side until it's nicely browned. Remove it from the pan and brush it all over with about 2 tablespoons of English mustard. Pop it in the fridge to cool while we work on the mushroom mixture. And for that, we're gonna need to toss in a pound of cremini mushrooms into a food processor along with 1 small coarsely chopped shallot and 2 cloves of coarsely chopped garlic. Pulse it until finely chopped to like a paste-like texture. In the same skillet you used earlier for the meat, melt 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter over medium-high heat. Add the mushroom mixture along with 1 teaspoon of chopped thyme, half a teaspoon of ground laurel or bay leaf, and season with salt and pepper. Saute everything until the mushrooms release their moisture and the liquid evaporates. This is going to take about 10 to 12 minutes. Then add a 1/4 cup of cooking sherry or white wine to deglaze the pan, scraping up any brown bits, and cook for another 4 to 5 minutes until it's thick and paste-like. Taste and season as needed, then set it aside to cool. Now it's wrapping time. Lay a large sheet of plastic wrap over your counter and arrange 6 to 8 slices of prosciutto so they overlap slightly, forming a nice meat blanket. Take the tenderloin out and spread the mushroom mixture all over it until coated on all sides. Now place your mustard-coated beef tenderloin right in the center. Using the plastic wrap, roll the prosciutto and mushroom mixture around the beef, creating a tight log. I don't know if I'm rolling this right, but I think I got there eventually. Secure it tightly with a wrap and chill in the fridge for 10 to 15 minutes. Next, flour your surface slightly and roll out a 7-ounce sheet of thawed puff pastry. Take the wrapped tenderloin out of the fridge and unwrap it, then place it in the center of the pastry. Beat 1 egg and brush it along the edges of the pastry to help seal. Wrap the pastry around the beef, trimming off any excess and avoid any overlap to keep it nice and tidy. Chill it again in the fridge for 10 to 15 minutes. While that rests, line a baking sheet with parchment paper, place the Wellington seam side down on the sheet, score the top of the pastry in diagonal lines or a pattern of your choosing. I'm just copying the cut patterns like in the cookbook photo. Brush it one last time with the remaining egg wash. When I'm cooking large cuts of meat, I'm always worried that the inside is going to be raw when I take it out. This beef Wellington is especially nerve-wracking because it's not like you can cut a piece and check. Heck, you can't even see the meat because it's all hidden in the pastry. I want to make sure it's cooked perfectly, and for that, I'm using today's sponsor, the TYFER Gold Series wireless thermometer. This thing is an absolute game changer. Each probe has 6 sensors built in, which means it automatically finds the lowest internal temperature of the meat. No more guessing if the center is cooked just right, and the smart base lets me monitor and control everything, but there's also the TYFER app that you can use to check everything on your phone. The cookbook says to bake this for 25 to 35 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, but why guess when I can just set the TYFER sync to notify me when it hits that perfect internal temperature? The book suggested medium rare, but I set it to medium since the wifey doesn't like it too raw looking. I can walk away, check temps away from the kitchen. I can even be playing Starfield in the other room and still get a notification when it hits that perfect internal temperature. Plus, it's built tough, it's waterproof, heat resistant up to 932 degrees Fahrenheit and has the most stable long-range connection. So if you want total peace of mind when you're cooking, check out the TYFER Gold Series using the link in the description and save 10% off with my code MisoHungrie and take the guesswork out of your cooking. Now all that's left to do is to plate it up with that chilled horseradish cream sauce on the side, and you've got yourself a Jemison fine dining experience.
Anyone who has sampled our offerings will assure you it is all worth it.
Up next is a dish that you might find sizzling on a skewer inside a dusty Aquila City cantina. Look up to the stars because we're making stellar kebabs. This recipe calls for 2 pounds of boneless lamb leg, but the cookbook also suggests that you can use sirloin tips or boneless beef flap meat. The grocery store didn't have any boneless lamb leg, so I went with the sirloin tips. Cut the meat into 1-inch pieces. Once that's prepped, grab a medium yellow onion and grate it using the coarse side of a box grater. You can also toss it into a food processor with a coarse shredding disc if you want to save some elbow grease. Next, we're going to put together a spice mixture that the cookbook calls Spice 1. This is composed of a teaspoon of dried thyme, a teaspoon of dried parsley, a teaspoon of marjoram, 2 tablespoons of garlic powder, 2 tablespoons of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of black pepper, a tablespoon of paprika, and 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. The sugar is optional though, so if you don't want to add any sweetness, it's fine without. Now combine that grated onion with 6 cloves of minced garlic, a 1/4 cup of olive oil, a 1/4 cup of tomato paste, and 6 tablespoons of red wine or pomegranate juice. I'm going with wine. Season this mixture with 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar or red wine vinegar, a tablespoon of that Spice 1 mixture that we just put together. Also toss in a teaspoon of oregano, half a teaspoon of seasoning sauce or browning sauce. I'm using browning sauce right here. Now when I use this browning sauce in my Nuka-Cola video, a lot of people are asking what the heck is browning sauce, so this is the thing that I used. Add to that half a teaspoon each of black pepper and allspice. You can also add in half teaspoon of sumac, but that's optional. Whisk all of this together until smooth and well combined, then add your cubed meat and stir until it's fully coated in the marinade. Scoop the entire mixture into a large zip top bag, press out the air, seal it up, and let it rest in the fridge for at least 6 hours or up to 48 hours if you want those flavors to get really deep in there. Once your meat is marinated, thread the cubes tightly onto 4 to 5 metal skewers or 6 to 8 wooden skewers that have been soaking in warm water for 30 minutes. If you're grilling, brush the grates with some oil and crank it to high. Lay your kebabs in a single layer and grill over direct heat, turning them every couple of minutes for even browning. You're aiming for about 7 to 10 minutes total, depending on your heat level and how cooked you want the meat to be. When done, let the kebabs rest for about 10 to 15 minutes before enjoying these kebabs that look pretty stellar. For dessert, we're making one of my favorite things about Starfield, chunks. These perfectly uniform cubes are hilariously dystopian, absurdly futuristic, and somehow I still want to try all of them. But for now, we'll just have to settle for one. We're having the chunks cake. First things first, let's make the cookie crust recipe by crushing up a cup of crisp cookies. You can use speculoos, vanilla wafers, or graham crackers like the ones I'm using here. Add to that 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Mix thoroughly, and we're going to use this as a base for our chunks cake. Next, we're going to grease 8 2x2x2-inch silicone molds with cooking spray. Then take your cookie crust mixture and press about 1 heaping tablespoon into the bottom of each mold until it forms a firm 1/4 inch thick layer. Pop those in the fridge to chill while we work on the filling. For the filling, grab a small bowl and mix together 2 tablespoons of cold water and 2 teaspoons of unflavored powdered gelatin. Let that sit for about 5 minutes to bloom, then microwave it for about 5 to 10 seconds until the gelatin fully dissolves. Set that aside, then let's move to the mixer. In a large bowl, combine 12 ounces of room temperature cream cheese with a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. Beat it until it's smooth and cohesive, then stir in 2 heaping tablespoons of sour cream and 2 teaspoons of lime juice. Finally, pour in your dissolved gelatin and mix again until everything is silky smooth. Then set that creamy blend aside. Now let's whip up some fluff. In another bowl, add a 3/4 cup of cold heavy whipping cream, a 1/2 cup of powdered sugar, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Whip it all on high until you get stiff peaks that hold their shape. Once that's ready, fold the whipped cream into the cream cheese mixture in 2 batches. Once everything's nicely combined, place the filling into your molds. I decided to use a piping bag for this. I think you can just use a spoon, but I think with a piping bag it's just a little bit easier and less messy. Smooth out the tops, but leave about a 1/4 inch of space at the top for the strawberry gel topping. Chill the molds in the fridge until they're fully set, which will take about 5 to 6 hours, or if you're prepping ahead, just let it sit overnight. Now on to the gorgeous strawberry crown. In a small saucepan over medium heat, combine 1.5 cups of chopped strawberries and or raspberries with 1 tablespoon of lemon juice and 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. Let that come to a simmer and cook for about 5 to 7 minutes until the berries break down and the sauce starts to thicken. Strain it through a fine mesh to get rid of the pulp, and you should be left with about 1 cup of smooth berry juice. To gel it up, whisk together 2 tablespoons of cold water and 2 teaspoons of unflavored powdered gelatin in a bowl. Just like before, let it bloom for 2 to 3 minutes, then stir it into the warm berry mixture until fully dissolved. Once it's cooled to nearly room temperature, pour it gently over the top of your chilled cheesecake chunks to form a shiny red crown. You'll want to freeze the molds for 2 hours until everything's firm and ready to unmold. When you're ready to serve, pop the cheesecake cubes out of the molds while they're still frozen. Let them thaw for about 30 minutes at room temperature or overnight in the fridge in an airtight container, and you've got yourself the perfect sweet tribute to Starfield's blocky, bite-sized innovation. Alright, time to find out if the flavors of Starfield are actually worth launching into orbit for. Let's start with the stellar kebabs. Really tender and well seasoned. I think having it marinate so long in the red wine and seasoning really helped the meat's texture and flavor. It has a nice char to it, but I should have had the grill hotter because I really dig those burnt bits. If you got an outdoor grill, I'm sure these will turn out even better for you. Again, I used beef for this, but I do think lamb would have been better. I think the subtle gaminess would go really well with the seasoning and the layers of flavor. Throughout the week, I ate this with salad, then mashed potatoes. I ate this with rice. Sometimes I dipped it in garlic sauce, sometimes I used chimichurri. This is really versatile and it goes really well with a lot of different things. Now on to the big boy, Jemison Wellington. That puff pastry is golden and flaky, exactly how I like it. The beef tenderloin is perfectly cooked and super juicy thanks to that type zinc gold. And the mushroom layer, to be honest, a bit on the salty side, especially with the prosciutto, but hey, I like salty things. Some people got a sweet tooth, I got a salt tooth. These medallions of Wellington are nice on their own, but that horseradish sauce, it takes it to a whole nother level. I love the kick that the horseradish adds, and the sauce is nice and creamy, which contrasts really well with the subtle crisp of the flaky pastry. I was really scared to make this dish, but I think this turned out really awesome for a first try. And now dessert. Let's take a bite out of this chunks cake. Not bad. I'm not the biggest fan of cheesecake because I don't really like the dense texture, but this is less dense and more on the creamy side, which I really like. It does taste a bit gummy because of the gelatin, since it has to firm up pretty good to retain that square shape, but it's not off-putting. Strawberry topping is especially jelly-like, but I don't mind. It does separate from the cheesecake itself very easily because it's jello-like and slidey instead of saucy. The cookie crumb crust is pretty good too, but if I was to make this again, I'd make that layer thick thicker since I really like that cookie texture. So is the Starfield Cookbook any good? Recipe-wise, I think this cookbook is a winner. Lore-wise, I think the cookbook captured as much as it could from the game. If you want a solid cookbook with lots of drink options and neat cube-shaped eats, then check this one out.